Well, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. We have some people that have captivated the attention of the whole world, not just our country, the whole world, and they're very brave, and there was a lot of rocket under them. I never saw anything like that. We were talking about it. It's I don't know how they do it. I wouldn't want to do it, but it takes people like this to make our country great. And again, I've never seen anything. Everybody I knew, they wanted to see the launch, and they especially wanted to see a successful landing. Well, I think we're going to be releasing as much as we can in the near future. For some reason, and I guess it's just a reason it's been in the minds of people for a long time, that is such, they want to find out about the UFOs and anything having to do with UFO or related material, and we're going to be releasing a lot of things from that we have, and I think some of it's going to be very interesting to people. I've interviewed people, my first term primarily, but I interviewed some pilots, very solid people, and they said they saw things that you wouldn't believe. So you're going to be reading about it. To get in there, you have to be very smart, you have to do a lot of things physically good. So I would have had no trouble making it. I'm physically very, very good. Maybe a little bit of a problem. I don't know, I'm sure. We'll have to try it sometime. Is a president allowed to go up in one of these missions?
We can get working on that, Mr.
We'd have no problem, right?
We can launch more rockets. The opportunity.
We'll have to try it. Congratulations very much. And by the way, the families are over here, beautiful families. Well, we have a shot at it. I mean, we don't like to say definitely, because then you say, oh, we failed. Because I think we could say we're ahead of schedule. So we have a good shot. We've authorized it. And I think with this team and, with Jared's done such an amazing job at NASA, I think we have a good shot, right? We'll see.
I feel like we just been bullshitting. I don't know though. I don't know. I feel like when they don't got nothing to explain, when they got no absolute idea what the fuck's going on in the world, they have no absolute no idea what's going on, they hit on that button. They hit on that big red button, that absolute stun button. I'm about to turn it on for you. I'm about to turn it on. Here we go. I'm about to turn it on. Let's get it popping. Cause I hope you're having a good time and an even better time now that your boy's here. Get you a little exotic drink. Get you a little exotic. Something like a soju. Look. The vibes we're on tonight. The energy we're on tonight. It's a little different, chat. I feel like it's a little different because we need to be in another world for this to make sense. We need to be in another dimension for this to make sense. The way they're dropping information on you is just like, yo, fuck off. Fuck off. What are we talking about? In all reality, I feel like we're living in a matrix. We're living in an absolute delusional world of fantasy. So I'm gonna open this soju up because I just want to crack open a new one. It's been a while. I want to crack open a new one with the boys. That shit tastes good. Lychee flavor, I feel like, bro, the way the world is moving right now, it's getting funnier and funnier to watch it unfold. It's beginning to seem more of a over the top exaggeration of reality than it truly is, bro. They're talking about underground aliens, talking about all kinds of living life forms that may be objectifying you on camera. They said, "Oh, we're under watch by the higher beings." And we have government officials talking about this, talking about, "Oh yeah, we sent NASA to Mars, they wrapped around the moon and they found a new civilization. Let's go ahead and get it popping." Like, what are we talking about? Are we in war or are we not? I'm confused what's going on. It's seeming day by day that these people want you to believe in some kind of schizophrenic reality that is not absolutely true. They just want you to be in this la la land. They want you to be in this absolute zone of psychosis that they can control you. And that's what I'm feeling like day by day, because I truly think, truly to my heart, that we're about to have like a false alien invasion just so our fucking civilization can lock in together. Because the way the Iran war is going right now, it's not looking good for the US right now. I'm truly not feeling it. I'm not feeling it at all. But what do I know? I feel like at the end of the day, people are stuck in the pattern they're stuck in. And that pattern is for achieving more and having more than others around your house. You know, keeping up with the Joneses for real. And that pattern has made it hard for America to make it equal for everybody else. So since that equality has not been passed along like it should be, the diversity is getting in, you know? I don't know. Everybody wants to be righteous. Everybody wants to have this good soul and good conscience when they're fucking bombing other countries. But you know, what do I know? What do I know? The freedom of speech is slowly eroding, slowly but surely eroding. I got banned from fucking Sharks for making an Ozempic joke. And that's absolutely crucial to the story. Because if somebody interrupts your set, if somebody throws something at you during your set, you're gonna want to say something during that comedy set. I would think so. So I did. I made an Ozempic joke. I called somebody a fat fucking fob. Okay, I didn't go that deep. I should have. I called somebody a fat fuck. Basically. And I'm not going to apologize about it because that truly is what I felt like in the moment. Why do we need to apologize for how we feel in the moment? If we say some crazy shit, it's okay. Why do we need to hold each other accountable when we can't even hold our politicians accountable for not promising us euphoria, promising us hell instead? I feel like the way we're bullshitted by people that genuinely have the power and we can't do nothing about that. We don't do nothing about that. Most people would rather go after the comedian or somebody that's casually making jokes, casually making everybody else laugh. We would rather go after that guy than actually somebody that can change how our policies are made. Why? Because it's easier. And people have been accustomed to making the easy choice, the absolute dumb choice. Because nobody wants to pay attention or have their hands in the local politicians' choices, because it feels like our government has screwed us and it has left us absolutely feeling vulnerable, right? That's genuinely how I feel. And I think that's how most Americans feel. They feel left vulnerable. They are in this schizophrenic land because that's how all of our mainstream media has made it seem like. Take us into this atmosphere of schizo and delusion. Oh, there's aliens in the water. There's bases. They're having an underground war. You need to pay attention to that. But not the war that we have on above ground. There was 15,000 fucking wars going on between the 19th century and now. Nobody cares. Oh, there was 17 earthquakes at the Area 51 base. Okay. Like, that's supposed to change the gas prices? That's supposed to give a fuck? Like, nobody gives a fuck if it's not in their fucking zip code. Like, if we're being 100% honest, if we're keeping it a buck, a bean, a fucking stain, nobody gives a fuck what's going on when their gas prices is $4 a gallon. I can't remember the last time it was $4 a gallon in Texas. Absolute degeneracy. Absolute disappointment in the fact that we're getting shafted and no lube is being applied on us. You know, just straight shafting to the core. And that's cool. That's cool, I guess, if that's what you want to be cool with. I recently went camping. I wanted to get away from the city. I wanted to just kind of have some time to myself. I wanted to sit back and just enjoy the vibes, bro. I have a friend getting deployed soon. You know, he's going off to war to fight the good fight. But I don't know if everybody feels that way. I don't know even if our people feel that way, that we are fighting the good fight. Are we on the right side of history? I don't know. Feels like not. And that's the problem. Every time you start saying something or speak up, you're anti Semitic, you're racist, you're homophobic, you're some label that you don't want to be or ever identified with. And I feel like this whole war is about the vibes. How are the vibes of this war? Are we feeling the vibes right now? Is it the vibe to bomb Iran right now? Is it the vibe to drop a nuke? Because that's what it feels like. Everybody's off the good vibes of war. Wasn't the Strait of Hormuz supposed to be open by now? What happened? Oh, what? Oh, they attacked another city. Guess fuck me. Fuck me and my gas prices. At what point are we gonna say enough is enough? At what point are we gonna be like, bro, what the fuck are we doing? Nobody in our government or in any kind of sector of the economy can explain to me why the fuck are we in Iran? Oil? Oh no, no, they were existential threats to us. They were a threat to us. I don't think so. I genuinely don't think so. I feel like they need a perpetual and ongoing war at all times to justify the unlimited spending that we have going on. We need to justify the fact that, hey, we're going to be fighting for a while. And it's going to be you and your brother and sisters to go fight for us. Because us politicians will stay here and be okay. But it's seeming more and more that people are not waking up like they should. And it could be the fact that, hey, we got the fucking world on a brick. We got the world on the brick. No matter what you want to watch, no matter what you want to see, you can see it on your phone and be completely distracted and absolutely out of the fighting. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Because it's good that nobody's getting PTSD, but it is bad that nobody's standing up either. We're all taking it equally. Don't cause a ruckus. Don't cause an issue. Don't embarrass me now. And then when they're talking about, oh, there's going to be an alien invasion someday. Oh, shit, there's aliens in the water. There's all this. Nobody gives a fuck because they're so overwhelmed. And they're like, hey, yo, what the fuck? Aliens are real? Of course, bro. You think we were here in this fucking universe all by ourselves? You seen all those hippies out? They're legalizing drugs. They're legalizing, you know, things. That's good. That's good. Everybody gets to try crack once in a while. But it's seeming like that they don't have any idea on what's going on how to run the one government that they should be running. The main job that they have is to run our government and make sure that, hey, the citizens are happy, because if they're not, they will riot. The one thing they got really good at is making sure we don't riot. But why can we not riot? Why can we not be angry? Oh, because it's not made to happen. It's made sure that, hey, you have to fall in line. You have to stay in between the lines, because if you don't, terrorist, you're a domestic terrorist. Why? Even though our fucking constitution protects us from tyranny by forming a militia, making sure that we are taken care of as a people. But I guess we got to find out why we can.
On November 9th, 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall marked one of the most dramatic moments of political change in modern history. For nearly 3 decades, the wall had divided the city of Berlin and symbolized the broader ideological split of the Cold War between the Soviet-aligned East Germany and the democratic West Germany. But in the months leading up to its collapse, hundreds of thousands of East Germans began protesting across the country, especially in the weekly Monday demonstrations in Leipzig, demanding freedom to travel and democratic reforms. As the protests grew and the government struggled to contain them, officials announced that travel restrictions would be lifted. Within hours, massive crowds gathered at the wall, and overwhelmed border guards eventually opened the checkpoints. People climbed onto the concrete barrier and began chipping pieces away with hammers. Over the following months, large sections of the wall were dismantled, as the East German government collapsed under the pressure of mass, but largely peaceful, protests. When we reflect on protests or revolts or movements of the past, we tend to view them as something tangible, something that genuinely sparked the change that protesters wanted to see. Sure, the past is littered with stories of protesters who tried and failed, but success stories like this were happening almost any time the people of a nation or state got so fed up with the current regimes that they felt like they had no other choice but to act. Today, I'd argue that most people feel hopeless and that there's nothing we can effectively do to revolt against the obviously evil forces of authoritarian governments and big tech corporations. But what if I told you that was their intention all along? Some of the greatest minds of previous generations predicted this, that we would become so sedated with entertainment and information that all we would do is complain among ourselves instead of gaining class consciousness. So in this video, I want to explain how we got here.
You know what can I say? I gotta do it.
Why it feels like every protest or revolt is ineffective, and what it might actually take to start seeing the change that most of us want to see in the world. There's a phrase that dates all the way back to around 100 AD, attributed to the Roman poet Juvenal: bread and circuses. In the Roman Empire, rulers used massive public entertainment like gladiator contests and chariot races, along with free grain to keep citizens happy and prevent civil unrest. Seeing what was going on, Juvenal used the term as a negative metaphor to explain what happens when citizens sedate themselves with pleasure and comfort. As he puts it in Satire X, the people that once bestowed commands, consulships, legions, and all else now concerns itself no more, and longs eagerly for just 2 things: bread and circuses. Learning.
And bro, I feel like that's how it is with all these gambling apps everywhere, bro. You can gamble on any and everything, bro. Anything you want. You can gamble on somebody spitting on a fucking wall.
From writings like these and comparing them to his own time period, English writer and philosopher Aldous Huxley warned citizens about the danger of too much pleasure, updated for the modern age in his 1923 essay, Pleasures, published in Vanity Fair. I highly recommend everyone watching this to read that short essay, but I'm just going to pull the most important and relevant passages from that to keep this video succinct. Huxley begins his essay by clarifying the enemy of our restlessness and depression. The dangers which confront our civilization are not so much the external dangers, wild men, wars, and the bankruptcy that wars bring after them. The most alarming dangers are those which menace it from within, that threaten the mind rather than the body and estate of contemporary man. In other words, like
I think that's what the CIA figured out, bro. They can just get to your mind, release all the social media dopamine They don't have to worry about nothing else.
Said in previous videos, the wars our generation are fighting are less physical, although that statement holds a bit less weight at the moment, and more spiritual than anything else.
Like everybody says, bro, it's a spiritual war going on right now.
Modern pleasures have gotten, quote, progressively more imbecile, such that actually using our brains to accomplish important tasks is almost entirely optional. Huxley observed this over a century ago now. He argued that distractions used to require at least a baseline level of intellectual effort and passion. For example, in the 17th century, royal families would listen to sermons and academical disputes regarding theology and metaphysics. The common people engaged in the exercise of a certain intelligence too. Their form of entertainment included intricate plays, and they were able to comprehend works like Othello and Hamlet by William Shakespeare. Huxley also explains how peasants went through traditional rites like dances and ceremonies. As he puts it, their pleasures were intelligent and alive, and it was they who, by their own efforts, entertained themselves.
I'm not gonna lie, nobody dances no more, bro. I do want to learn how to dance. I watched the Michael Jackson movie, and bro, it gave me some sort of inspiration to just learn how to dance, bro.
Now, the majority of the pleasures we engage with are less participatory and more passive. For Huxley's generation, this meant things like the gramophone, otherwise known as a record player, the press, where news was filled with democratized information that did not require much thinking, and watching sports rather than playing them. It's pretty funny that Huxley and other thinkers at the time saw people using a record player as something that was making them dumber, and it just goes to show that there is a bit of nuance with this, that not all advancements in technology making things easier, like listening to music, is necessarily damaging like Huxley seemed to have thought it was, and that's where I would disagree. Like, I do think just a little bit of what he was saying was basically, oh, anything that makes something easier and more accessible is poison to the mind. But I do think he really does hit on a few great points for contemporary entertainment. Today, the smartphone has combined just about every single form of pleasure and entertainment you could think of into a pocketable device that we keep with us at all times. This has a myriad of negative consequences, of course. Social media makes us depressed and anxious, burnt out, and disrupts our sleep. Any sexual fantasy you desire is at your fingertips. There's not a one-to-one connection between you and the necessities of life because it's all been streamlined for convenience. These are all things that I've talked.
Convenience is the pain and absolute ass whooping to success.
About at length on this channel, right? But what I want to talk about specifically is what happens to our ability to revolt when we drown ourselves in mindless stimulation. Firstly, social media encourages what I would call a portrayal of bad stuff to bad stuff actually happening pipeline. We tend to read more about bad news than good news because we're wired to seek negative information, so the algorithms reflect that, and we feel bad and powerless about what's happening in the world that may or may not be portrayed accurately. Then we go and talk to our friends about it. If we can't find any sort of mutual agreement about happy stuff happening in the world, at least we can all agree that the world sucks right now, right? Well, then that inevitably is going to affect the mood that we carry into our real-life interactions. We think things are really bad, partly because they actually are, but also partially because we're fed.
Speed memes are everywhere, bro. I'm trying to get to that level of meme making. How the fuck did this speed become a meme for everything?
An immensely unnatural amount of bad stuff, so things actually do get worse. This cycle repeats itself indefinitely until a force strong enough to change it steps in, but that force rarely gets the opportunity to step in due to the second reason that social media affects our revolts, which is something that I already briefly touched upon, which is emotional numbness through overstimulation. You see, there's something very powerful that happens when we don't fill up every ounce of free time we have with doom scrolling. When you don't consume a podcast with headphones on every single time you step outside for a walk, when
Okay, listen, that's hard as fuck, bro. Silence sucks.
you don't scroll while your water bottle is filling up, when you don't default to TikTok or Instagram Reels every time something bad happens in your life to escape the reality of that bad thing, patterns in your life start to emerge. Problems once thought to be unsolvable slowly figure themselves out in your head when you allow your mind space to breathe. When you give your brain time to process the amount of stimuli you consumed in 2 hours that would have been enough to kill a Victorian child, you start to realize something. You start to realize, wait a second, there actually are tangible ways out of this shitty situation. And come to think of it, I'm actually enraged that I'm in this situation in the first place. And what are the forces that be, the systemic issues that are causing me to feel so shitty? As much as some people might disagree, anger and being completely fed up with where you are and how the world works is often the only way to get pushed to the point where people will actually start to do something that elicits positive change. And that cannot happen if you are heavily sedated through modern forms of escapism like social media,
I feel like
pornography.
that's how social media apps are taking away your authority to run your life. They're making sure you're streamlined to the absolute fullest. So you don't fight back. You don't do anything or say anything because you're sedated with the schizo. This is like a Percocet on steroids, bro.
And a video game addiction. I'm not against video games, by the way, but they are very easy to get addicted to and slip into for hours and hours at a time to just escape a shitty situation that you might have the power to change.
But listen, I'm not gonna lie, if you're having a shitty time in life and you don't know a way out, just play some video games, bro. I can't even lie to you, bro. You have no idea the amount of video games I've played to get me out of a breakup, get me out of absolute financial ruin, because it gives you some time to like just not be thinking about that. Just think about some happy thoughts, and it might be able to. I don't know. I just disagree with that. You don't need to be depressed all the time. Play some video games. Get out of that mindset.
The next thing that this pleasure, specifically social media, has spread is this collective view that protesting and demonstrating, getting yourself out there in that way, is inherently performative or just seen as a virtue signal.
That's the CIA.
Now, there's undoubtedly a lot of influencers out there who post about some tragedy that's happened in the world, not to raise awareness, but to act like they give a shit.
Just wanted to come on here and say I do stand for what's right, and what's right now is Black lives do matter, and white people do have white privilege. So it's unfortunate, but fill the comments with a fist and spread the positivity and love. Let's go.
But I feel fear that social media has turned the act of revolting into something that is seen as cringeworthy or too try-hard in nature. If you do actually care, it's often automatically labeled as performative because the way protests and other forms of revolt are portrayed on social media is usually through the lens of comedy, memes, or insults. Something adjacent to this that really grinds my gears these days is when people say they aren't political. I'm not gonna lie, up until like a few years ago, this was kind of me. I thought caring about politics was just another psyop that didn't really change anything.
I say that all the time for reasons of comedy.
Trying to make yourself seem right. And I'm sure there's a lot of that, but like everybody is political, okay? The whole thing about not being political is a psyop. The fact that you think you cannot be political about something, and I'm not saying I agree with the two-party system. I think it is, it's not a good system, but saying you are not political is the psyop. Saying you don't care about politics and being fed up with the world is a contradiction.
Yeah, man, I'm not really...
You can't just lay around and take it, bro. Pause. Like, you just have to fight back. You have to do something and stand for something, because if you don't stand for anything, you will fall for everything.
Too big on politics. But anyways, let me tell you about how much I hate my job, my boss, my landlord, my shitty health insurance, my student loans, my city's public transportation, the fact that I come home too tired to do anything after work every day, the fact that groceries cost double what they used to, the fact that no one can afford a home, the fact that my rent eats half of my paycheck, the endless wait times at the hospital, and how depressing the news always is. But yeah, man, I'm just not really big on politics.
Trust me, big government
Got
loves hearing you say
Got
stuff
him.
like that because it reinforces another reason why we all complain but nothing actually changes. The extreme divide between the average citizen. We've gotten to the point where sharing different opinions from someone is immediately labeled as wrong and a threat to another person because productive dialogue is simply incompatible on these platforms that encourage rage baiting and quick, incomplete hits of misinformation. Everybody thinks they have the true, objective, correct answer to all of society and the world's problems, and nobody wants to listen to anyone else's solution that doesn't confirm their pre-existing beliefs. Getting into useful debates and discussions that actually promote some sort of change requires some of that space that I talked about earlier. It requires you to sit, think, and conceptualize your argument, to strengthen it and articulate it in a good way, without immediately saying, this thing bad, this thing good. And instead of collectively coming together to fight our common enemy, big tech and authoritarian governments, We start blaming trivial matters like minorities or other people who don't look or think like us. Like, I promise you, dude, the reason that you get paid pennies for your 9 to 5 and you come home miserable and goon for 1 hour isn't because your favorite hockey team is celebrating Pride Month. That is exactly the type of thing that these big corporations want you to get mad at because it keeps us fighting among each other instead of coming together. And so
That's the classic divide and conquer, and there's a fucking bug.
social media has been an incredible tool for reinforcing that division. And I'm not saying that entertainment itself is the enemy. Humans have been entertaining themselves since the dawn of time to escape the hardships of life. Like, we always are going to need a temporary bout of escapism in some healthy form to keep going in life, man. Like, sometimes we need to forget who we are and escape into some form of entertainment. That's a really important aspect of life. It's these contemporary forms of entertainment and spectacle that are psychologically designed to keep you scrolling, exhausted, distracted, and angry that are the problem. And this is why I feel most of our efforts to create meaningful change in the world fall short. These new forms of entertainment have made it feel like no matter what we do or no matter how hard we try, nothing is going to change. So
Yeah, I think they want you to feel absolutely flabbergasted and out of options. Because if they make you feel out of options, you can just tote the line, fall in line. But there's always options.
the safest thing to do is retreat back into the comfort of distraction. Now we scroll, we laugh at the absurdity of it all, we complain to our friends, and then we move on to whatever next video, outrage, or algorithm the feed presents us with, blaming our circumstances on things that have nothing at all to do with them, confusing and dividing us even further. So how do we actually start moving shit in a positive direction? If forces we can't see or
Just
hear
jerk off 3
that
times a
are
day.
unreachable, yet we know are there, are intentionally making the lives of the average person more unenjoyable and less stable, how do we break down a Berlin Wall that we cannot see? Well, firstly, and I already stressed this a bit, you have to have the capacity to get emotional enough and fed up enough to actually want to do something about it. Things are going to feel just okay enough if you keep engaging with mindless distraction that either numbs you to the systemic issues you know are affecting you or make
So take a dopamine detox, as they say in the hip hop stream. Take a dopamine detox away from all social media, away from everything that's flooding your system.
makes you feel hopeless because a lot of that stimulation is just bad news without any tangible solution. As cringe and cliche as it sounds, problems don't feel like problems until you sit with them in silence. That's why when you lay your head down on the pillow at night, your head won't shut up about everything that's wrong with your current life because it's finally given the space to talk to you about those things. I'm calling myself out here too, by the way. Secondly, there needs to be a greater call to action after awareness. Now, this isn't to say that protesting, getting out there, making some sort of sign, and making a certain movement more aware is ineffective. It absolutely does raise awareness and brings to light some issues that people maybe weren't even aware of, and then maybe that makes enough of them fed up to actually join in on the movement too. But often there isn't a clear sense of direction or solution after the fact. Another YouTube creator, Deja, made a great video on this topic where she discussed how protesting actually isn't meant to be the solution. It's only meant to agitate, disrupt, and bring people together. But after the fact, people often just revert back to regular life as if nothing happened.
It's supposed to cause a uproar and kind of cause like, hey, we're like-minded people. We can put our differences aside. We all know we're getting fucked over. Let's come to a common conclusion, It doesn't necessarily have to fucking up and change the whole system. It's supposed to kind of put a break on it and be like, hey, let's get this shit together.
Because they're not really sure what to do next. So first, let's just talk about on an individual level, what you can do right now by yourself. Here's what I would tell you to do. Start boycotting the shit that you think is ruining the world. You think AI is making people dumber and spreading misinformation? Cancel your ChatGPT subscription. Do you hate seeing these social media companies make millions off of these 5-second ads in between 20 seconds of scrolling and blasting your retinas with stupid stimulation? Then delete the apps or try to use them as little as possible. Find out all the consumer products that these companies own, which is almost fucking all of them, and try to not engage or buy anything from them as much as is reasonably possible. Secondly, we and you need leverage. Again, this is something Deja emphasized, but power does not accrue from simply getting more and more people to join a movement. You need leverage from people who have the power to actually sustain those movements and enact the changes. A huge part of the reason stuff like labor movements or the civil rights movement and even the fall of the Berlin Wall succeeded in the past was because they negotiated contracts, filed lawsuits, pushed legislation, and built networks that could sustain pressure for years. Mutual aid was also an incredibly important aspect of most of these. When workers went on strike in the early 20th century, they didn't just walk off the job and hope things would work out. They had unions, and those unions built strike funds to help workers pay for food and rent while they weren't receiving wages. They organized community kitchens.
That's the thing, bro. They've ruined the community, because if you have a community, you can start a union, you can start a movement. But if you have no community, you're gonna be like, hey, yo, what the fuck do I do? What am I fucking on? When you don't have a community, you're kind of just lost.
Family supported one another. That's the sort of infrastructure that allows these strikes and protests to last for weeks and months or even years, which is sometimes how long it takes to force these companies or the government to negotiate contracts and actually enact the change. Leverage is what turns this outrage into consequence, because without it, it just runs the risk of being symbolic. It runs the risk of being a movement where people are having awareness raised about this thing and we think, yeah, it's really bad, but no one actually has the power to reach the institutions that are required to reach in order for something to happen. If you're looking for those communities and infrastructures that do possess some of that power, the first place to start is local, and the internet can actually be an incredibly useful tool here.
That's what I say, bro. Everybody needs to get involved into local politics, because if you're not into local politics, I feel like you're kind of missing out. And that could be just as like, hey, I picked the mayor, I picked this, I picked that. Oh, I have a park that they're trying to build. I will make sure they build the best park possible. They put lilies in the park and not fucking roses. Whatever it is, I think they made local politics so not important, then people just don't care. But local politics are so important. Pick your community and what you want to do with it, and that will change what it is. But I feel like it all starts with the fact that they're cutting out local community centers and people don't feel as connected to their community, and that's a big issue.
If you use it with a specific goal in mind instead of just consuming whatever gets thrown at you. Start by searching for organizations in your city that are already working on the issue you care about. If you're sick of housing costs in your city, type out tenant union plus your city into Google. If you're fed up with people in your community struggling to afford basic necessities, search mutual aid plus your city. If you're frustrated with wages, workplace conditions, or job security, search labor union plus your city. Most cities already have some form of these groups, and many of them operate through websites, email lists, or something like Slack or Discord, where they coordinate their real-world action. Another thing you can use the internet for is to identify who actually has influence over the issue you're concerned about. If it's a company, look up their major clients, investors, or partnerships. If it's a local policy, find out which council members or committees are responsible for it. If it's a landlord or development company, see which properties they own and which banks finance them. Then, once you've mapped out who actually holds influence, you have somewhere concrete to direct your attention. As far as eliciting change on a grander scale, trying to take down the ultra-rich, the biggest corporations, you would need some insane level of leverage. But to be honest, those smaller local movements is what influences the larger movements, the more global movements of change. I'm telling you, things are not hopeless in our digitized, hyper-reality, apathetic, overpriced world. I'm sure that you've spent at least some sort of time thinking about a world in which we use all of these technological advancements to benefit the greatest amount of people, and I don't think it's as far off as you might think. You just need to be fucking inspired more on a daily basis, man, to get that juice and that energy to fucking stand up and do something about life. Get involved in something greater than yourself. Join clubs, engage with different forms of art, taste the flavors of life.
That's the thing, bro. They've taken art and that's taken away most people's inspiration, bro. When you take art out of the society, it takes the inspiration out of society, man. I feel it 100%.
A stranger, face your problems instead of escaping them for another day and allowing them to grow worse. I'm gonna sound sappy here. I don't give a shit. You are capable of way more than you could ever imagine. And I truly believe that. If you feel like you are not getting the power that you feel like you deserve in a certain area of life, you need to either create a movement or join a movement with the power to attain that power. Identify the source of your unfulfillment and the people you care about, find the communities, find the pressure points, and start the change. Channel those emotions
that change now.
that you're fucking fed up with shit into something positive. Do not let big tech and authoritarian regimes drain the joy out of human existence. Holding hope and optimism is your greatest act of rebellion against these chuds, and actually doing something about these forces is possible. Everything's going to be good and cool, but it's probably going to get at least a little bit worse before things get really cool.
Facts.
But it might not take as much time if you...
Look, I'm with you, bro. I'm with you. Hey, I respect the hustle, bro. There's a lot of people not understanding that, hey, you have the power to say no. You have the power of sticking with your guns, making sure that you truly feel the way you want to feel. Like, nobody should be making you feel a certain way. And our government has made me feel a certain way, a little cringe. The way we started getting whooped in the Iran war, it made me started feeling cringe. What can I say? That's just reality. I don't know. I feel like the way we're moving, the way the fucking world is moving, we need to get a little bit more unity in between the average folks, in between the local heartthrob and the local degenerate. You need to have a little bit of love and affection in the community, because right now I feel like a lot of people are just kind of lost and hopeless. They're kind of just chugging along, making sure, hey, is this okay to do? Is this good to do? I don't know. I feel like a lot of people are just kind of just lost, just kind of just in the sauce. They're just kind of moving along, just saying, hey, we got this. And I don't know what the issue is, what it could be. Who's making this slip? Who is making these plans? I don't know. You tell me. But I guess we'll just figure it out. Why dictators are necessary.
First leader of a country. These are the 5 most successful dictators of all time, who have outperformed almost every democracy on Earth. The first built the fastest economic transformation in history. The second was the first leader of a country that shouldn't exist. The third was a factory worker who made the poor disappear. The fourth survived 22 assassination attempts from Stalin. And the last
22?
one is a refugee who stopped a genocide of his own people. 5 dictators successful in 5 different categories, starting with category 1, transformation speed. Most successful dictator, Park Chung-hee of South Korea. Yes, South Korea had a dictator, and before he came to power, South Korea looked like this, and it was comparable in GDP per capita to Ghana, both sitting around $150 in 1960. But the year after he came to power, everything changed. And today, South Korea looks like this, and their GDP per capita is $36,000. Here's what happened. Park Chung-hee staged a military coup on May 16, 1961. His first move after acquiring South Korea was to arrest the country's businessmen and charge them with illicit profiteering. Some were paraded.
Now, I'm not gonna lie, America might need a little bit of some of that, a little bit of some of that.
Through the streets wearing signs that read, "I am a corrupt pig." And to be honest, they kind of were. Under the previous Syngman Rhee government, they had gotten sweetheart deals on foreign aid dollars, buying government property at far below market value and receiving preferential access to scarce foreign currency which they'd use to import goods and sell at huge markups. South Korea in the 1950s ran almost entirely on American aid, and a small group of businessmen had positioned themselves as the middlemen skimming off that aid pipeline. Then Park Chung-hee offered them a deal. Invest in the industries I tell you to invest in, or lose everything. Needless to say, they invested. He nationalized the banks, so the state controlled all credit. Low-interest loans were funneled to hand-picked companies like Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and Daewoo. They were given export targets, and if they hit them, they got more money, more tax breaks, and more protection. If they missed them, however, the money would disappear. Park held meetings at the Blue House with chaebol leaders, personally set their export targets, and gave out decorations to top performers. A few interesting outcomes followed that have with almost 100% certainty affected your life. See, Hyundai, who had zero shipbuilding experience, received government backing to build the now world's largest shipyard, Ulsan Shipyard. That meant by the 1980s, South Korea ended up as the world's second largest shipbuilder. Samsung went from processing sugar and making wool to building semiconductor chips. These companies exist and are what they are today because a military dictator picked them, funded them, and shielded them until they could compete globally. The results are staggering. GDP grew at more than 8% per year for 3 decades. Exports went from $480 million to nearly $128 billion. The success is undeniable, but this economic growth didn't come without a serious human cost too. We are, after all, talking.
Hey, greatness takes a toll. I think that's all I can say, bro. Greatness takes a toll. When you want to be great, it will take your soul.
About a dictatorship. In the sweatshops, teenage girls sewed for 14 hours a day with no ventilation, and girls were given amphetamine injections to stay awake. For 18 years, ethics were pushed aside for economic growth.
Alright, that's a little too much greatness. That's a little too much greatness, bro.
Growth under Park. He even amended the constitution in 1972, giving himself unlimited terms, power to appoint a third of the legislature, and
if Trump hit this, what y'all doing? If Trump hit this in the next election, what y'all doing?
Emergency decree authority to suspend any freedom he wanted. But his reign ended on October 26, 1979, when his own intelligence director shot him dead at a private dinner. Finally,
imagine Kash Patel. That's why the assassination attempt on Trump did not work, and that guy was talking about he was gonna leave Kash Patel alone because he wanted Kash Patel to assassinate Trump.
Democracy came in 1987, but questions that remain unanswered are whether South Korea would be where it is today without him. Now, I've mentioned in some of my videos that I'm Danish, which I wanted to confirm. So I partnered with MyHeritage to do a while is European economic growth. Kwon Yu of Singapore. It's quite interesting because if we talk about sheer economic growth and building probably the best run country in the world, it's hard to argue for anyone else. And his accomplishments are even more fascinating considering he didn't want Singapore to become an independent country in the first place and didn't want to become a dictator of it either, nor did his population. I know that sounds confusing, but it's important to realize that Singapore is a relatively new country and they were given independence against their will. See, in 1965, Singapore was kicked out of the Malaysian Federation because they simply didn't want it, making Singapore the only country in modern history to gain independence against its will. They were left with no army, no natural resources, including no drinking water, no industry, and with half of their population being illiterate. This was a complete disaster, and the guy running it, Lee Kuan Yew, literally broke down crying on national television the day independence was announced. He cried because he thought his country was going to die, and it very well should have, but it didn't. Singapore's GDP per capita in 1965, when they gained independence, was just $516. By the time Lee stepped down in 1990, it was $11,862, and today it's over $90,000.
bro, he absolutely gave that economy fucking steroids, bro. He was like the Bill Clinton of the economy.
They didn't find oil or gas or minerals. They obviously didn't gain any new farmland either. So let me show you what Lee did. Lee ran Singapore the way a CEO runs an international company. He made English the working language to make the Singaporean workforce attractive to global markets. He built the Economic Development Board to attract foreign companies and build infrastructure around them. When he started, Singapore's factories made matches, fish hooks, and mosquito coils. By the late 70s, they were manufacturing electronics, petrochemicals, and precision engineering. By 2001, foreign companies accounted for 75% of all manufactured output. That's only part of the story though, because Lee made sure Singaporeans learned from these companies by mandating technology transfer. If you wanted access to Singapore's cheap, disciplined, English-speaking workforce, you had to train them. And once they were trained, Singaporean companies started doing the same work themselves. And he was ruthless about corruption. Civil servants are among the highest paid government officials on earth, because Lee understood
That's
that if
how
you
it should be here, bro. But here, they'll give you $150,000 a year, but you might be making fucking 150 million underneath the desk. You see all these fucking politicians with a fucking yacht that's more than their fucking yearly income.
pay people enough, bribery becomes pointless. In 1986, his own Minister for National Development was caught taking bribes. The man committed suicide and left a letter to Lee expressing remorse, because he knew what Lee would do to him. In 2013, a senior director at the Anti-Corruption Bureau itself was caught stealing and sentenced to 10 years. Look, a lot of great things happened under Lee, but the uncomfortable truth is he did it all without real democracy. The People's Action Party has won every single election since 1959.
I wonder
and it's not because
how.
they're
I
that
wonder how.
popular. Opposition politicians have been sued, convicted, bankrupted, and forced to sell copies of their own books on the street to pay legal debts. The thing is, Lee was open about it. He said, quote, "Between being loved and being
sassy,
feared,
bro.
I have always believed Machiavelli was right." He said, quote, "We decide what is right, never mind what the people think." Among his admirers are Richard Nixon, who wrote that Lee was a big man on a small stage who in other times might have attained the world stature of a Churchill. Margaret Thatcher said she read and analyzed every one of his speeches. That's a hell of a compliment from two democratic leaders, and is also an admission, because Churchill operated in a democracy. Lee Kuan Yew proved you could get the same results, maybe even better, without one. And the country he built is still standing, still growing, still ranked among the richest and least corrupt on earth. Lee reshaped Singapore's identity in a single generation, changed the language, the economy, everything.
Damn,
The next
baller.
dictator did something else and was more
Hitler,
successful
oh.
than any other on this list in sheer numbers. Deng Xiaoping of China. Now, if Lee is the most impressive story on a small scale, Deng Xiaoping is definitely the most impressive story on any scale, as he lifted more people out of poverty than any other human in history. In 1978, 88% of the Chinese population lived in extreme poverty. The country had just come out of the Cultural Revolution, a decade where Mao destroyed the education system, persecuted anyone with expertise, and left the economy in ruins. Mao also purged Deng twice. The first time during the Cultural Revolution in 1968, where Deng was stripped of all positions, denounced as a capitalist roader, and sent to work in a tractor factory in rural Jiangxi province. His son, Deng Pufang, was thrown from a third-floor window by red guards and paralyzed for life. Deng spent 4 years working the factory floor. Then Zhou Enlai, the premier at the time, convinced Mao to bring Deng back in 1973 because the country was falling apart and they needed someone competent. So Deng came back, started fixing things, got popular, and Mao then purged him again. Then Mao died in September 1976, and this
He was just building aura in a different state. I get it, bro. You gotta build aura and recoup all your aura from all the other years.
is where it gets wild. Mao's wife Jiang Jing and 3 allies, the Gang of 4, tried to seize power, but Hua Guofeng, Mao's chosen successor, had them arrested within a month. So now Hua Guofeng is running China, and he's a Mao loyalist whose entire legitimacy comes from Mao having allegedly said, "With you in charge, I'm at ease." Deng was still in political exile at this point, but the military and the old guard party members wanted him back. Hua resisted for over a year, but the pressure was just too much, so Deng was officially rehabilitated in July 1977. And then Deng did something brilliant. He didn't challenge Hua directly. He praised Mao publicly while quietly dismantling Mao's policies behind closed doors. He coined the phrase, "seek truth from facts," which sounds like harmless philosophy, but was actually a direct attack on Maoist ideology, because it meant stop doing things because Mao said so and start doing things because they work. A brilliant example of making a crucial change that would be illegal under Mao is what he did once he got news of what was happening in a tiny village called Xiaogang. Here, 18 farmers had signed a secret contract. They agreed to divide the collective farmland into family plots. Each family would meet their government quota, but anything beyond that, they would keep. This was extremely illegal and it would have gotten them killed under Mao, but the famine just 15 years earlier had killed 67 of the village's 120 residents of starvation. They were understandably desperate. And the result of this was astonishing. Grain output the next year hit 6 times the previous year. Deng eventually got word of this, and instead of punishment, like Mao would have done, he recognized what worked and rolled it out nationwide. This, along with other reforms...
Yeah, bro, that's the thing with America right now, bro. They're making the farmers fight against the immigrants because they want to make sure, hey, the core, the base of the core is strong. Because right now, if you get the farmers against your absolute new people in town that actually see what the fuck's going on, that are not brainwashed, if you fight the new folks with the old folks, oh, divide and conquer, baby.
The groundwork for China's poverty rate to decrease from 88% in 1981 to just 0.2% in 2019. Over 800 million people lifted out of extreme poverty, accounting for 75% of all global poverty reduction during that period. But Deng was also the man who ordered the tanks into Tiananmen Square. Students had been calling for democracy and free speech. Instead, the military killed hundreds, if not thousands, of Chinese. Deng decided that economic reform would continue, but political reform would not. The deal he offered the Chinese people was simple, yet brutal. You will get richer, but you will not get free. And by the most basic measure,
I feel like that's what America is right now. We're all gonna get our economy fixed, possibly. This is a possible chance, but I don't know if we're gonna get freedom. I think our freedoms are beyond us. Our freedoms are given up after COVID. I think we should have realized what happened. After COVID, I feel like a lot of our freedoms, ta-ta.
Measure of human welfare. You know, can you feed your family? Do your children have a chance? Deng improved more lives than any other single leader in recorded history. No one is even close. Now, the dictators so far have all achieved something measurable: GDP growth, poverty reduction, but there's also another kind of success that's harder to quantify, and that is being universally liked. See, most dictators are feared. Some are respected, of course, but almost none are truly liked. The world treats dictators the same way you would treat a dangerous neighbor, with polite distance and for sure no dinner invitations. But this wasn't the case for Josip Broz Tito of Yugoslavia, because he got invited to every dinner. Well, except for maybe Stalin's, because, I mean, he did try to kill him 22 times. He did this because Tito refused to subordinate Yugoslavia to Soviet control. This made the West very interested in what was going on in Yugoslavia. Here was a communist country that wasn't a Soviet puppet. Tito used that leverage brilliantly. You see, during the Cold War, every country was essentially pressured to pick a side, align with the US and NATO, or align with the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact. Tito didn't want either, so he co-founded the Non-Aligned Movement in 1961 alongside Nehru of India, Nasser of Egypt, Sukarno of Indonesia, and Nkrumah of Ghana. The idea was that newly independent nations in Africa, Asia, and Latin America shouldn't have to be pawns in a superpower chess match. And it was massively successful. At its peak, the movement had over 120 member states, more than half of the UN.
Libya.
For Tito, this was a
shit.
masterstroke.
Libya, Uganda, Qatar. Oh, they have some big ballers in here. Bangladesh, Guatemala. Oh, shit.
broke. He went from leading a mid-sized Balkan country that had just been expelled from the communist bloc to being the spokesperson for half the developing world, and suddenly his influence extended worldwide. This meant Yugoslav citizens could travel freely to the West, which was unique in the communist world. Western music and consumer goods were widely available. The success here is undeniable, but let's not forget, Tito was a dictator, and he for sure lived like one. His possessions were estimated to be worth dozens of millions of euros. His luxurious living is undeniable. I mean, Richard Burton wrote in his diary that Tito lived in incredible luxury incomparable to anything I've seen. When Saddam Hussein visited Tito's nuclear bunker in Bosnia, he was so impressed he had Tito's engineers build him a replica under Baghdad. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And when Tito died on May 4th, 1980, something happened that had never happened before and hasn't happened since. His funeral drew delegations from 128 out of 154 UN member states. No other leader of any kind has drawn that many world leaders to a single event. But
now that's aura. That's definition of aura.
Within 11 years of that funeral, everything he'd held together fell apart. Yugoslavia collapsed into the bloodiest European conflict since World War II. 130,000 people dead, 2.4 million refugees. The ethnic tensions Tito had managed through authority and charisma erupted the moment his authority was gone. But now to the final dictator, Paul Kagame of Rwanda, the man who stopped a genocide. It's 1994 and Paul Kagame has just taken Rwanda with a rebel army, a country that was in as horrible a state you could possibly imagine. Nearly 1 million people had just been murdered in 100 days. Neighbors killed neighbors with machetes and farming hoes, a genocide that was rooted in ethnic divisions that Belgian colonists had manufactured decades earlier. They issued identity cards classifying everyone as either Hutu or Tutsi, and in 1994,
we learned about this in high school. Oh shit. We learn about Hutus and Tutsis, bro.
Same cards were used at roadblocks to decide who lived and who died. Kagame, a Tutsi refugee by the way, who had grown up in a Ugandan camp since the age of 2, stopped it all. He inherited a country with a GDP that had collapsed in half and a life expectancy at just 28. His first move after gaining power was to abolish these identity cards. He removed Hutu and Tutsi from all official paperwork, erasing the ethnic hierarchy. Then he rebuilt. He actually modeled Rwanda explicitly on Singapore, the country he studied most closely. He also had zero tolerance for corruption, making Rwanda one of the least corrupt nations in Africa. He also created a one-stop government agency that could register a business in just 6 hours, making Rwanda the only low-income country in the world ranked in the top 30 for ease of doing business. All of this meant that Rwanda's economy grew 7 to 8% a year for 2 decades straight. Life expectancy went from 28 to 70, and their capital, Kigali, became the cleanest city in Africa. But his election results tell you the other side of the story. I mean, the man got 93, 95, 99% approval ratings and votes, which, you know, is interesting. Critics also get kidnapped, and Freedom House has ranked him alongside Russia and China. But look, nobody on this list started with a country that was in a worse state. I mean, the citizens of the country were literally killing each other, and nobody's results are therefore harder to argue with. And he is also the only dictator on this list that is still in power. So there you have it, 5 dictators, 5 categories. Who did it best? But that's it for this video. Remember to check out My Heritage and their DNA.
I don't know, bro. I feel like all of the dictators should, you know, be hung, but I get it, bro. They made their countries better than they were before. And sometimes, bro, you need that authoritative government. You need that daddy in office, bro. You need that zaddy in office, bro. You need somebody to put belt to ass. You have to have somebody to put belt to ass. And I think right now, is Trump gonna put belt to ass? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I feel like right now he's not putting belt to ass to Iran. He just got fake information. But the thing is, bro, I feel like he might have been fed bad information. Like, I'm not a Trump fan. I'm not a Biden fan. I'm not either or. I'm not even registered to vote, bro. I fucking hate voting. But I feel like he was fed bad information. The way we realize how we live life is nowhere near how the president or anybody really official lives life. They're fed that information. Somebody curates that information to give to them. So how do we know that he's not gonna, for the rest of his life, getting bad information? We don't. And that's the thing. I feel like the world is faker than it ever was, man. This whole AI bullshit is getting faker than it ever was, because at the end of the day, AI doesn't have to prove to anybody what it really truly believes in. It has to just prove to the master that put in the code. So it hallucinates A, B, and C to give you E. Well, shit, it is what it is. The way the world is moving, I'm feeling more and more like we're becoming super autonomous, super away from the zone. That's why I like going camping once in a while, because it kind of grounds you. You got to shit outside in the grass, piss outside in the fucking grass, in the bushes, and you really truly feel like, damn, if there was any kind of craziness, I'm going to have to go back to shitting in the woods. And that reality check changes it all for me. Truly. Because I feel like nowadays this level of luxury, this level of ingenuity of human spirit has kind of made it so convenient for us to just not give a fuck. Just kind of follow the flow, enjoy the vibes. Because if you don't enjoy the vibes right now, it's only going to get worse. Oh shit, you pay your taxes, you deserve to go on a vacation. And when you go on vacation, your whole anger resets and you're not so angry. You get back to normal and you get back to in line. That's why we get at least 2 weeks off, because other than that, you might be in psychosis because the aliens are in the water. I can't believe that all of a sudden, when the war is going on and we realize we're losing the war, that people are like, oh shit, there might be aliens. What about 50 fucking years ago when we're talking about Area 51? Nobody gave a fuck then, so why do we give a fuck now? But what do I know? What do I know? All I know is that, hey, I think you should go take a shit outside.